But something I want you to watch about Olu is that he does a fantastic job is this initial step. So a lot of people, there's a little bit of a misconception that you want to gain a ton of ground with that step. What you actually want to do is have great shin angles. If you watch any track star coming off right away, their shin angles are almost vertical, parallel to the ground. And that's what you see with Olu, because that's how you accelerate. That's how you create force.
And you'll never sound smarter at your tailgate than if you start talking about shin angles of an offensive lineman. That is the good stuff, Landon.
There you go.
Welcome to a very special T. Frank's film room, because this isn't T. Frank's film room anymore. This is Landon's film room. We are going to be going over what Landon Tengwall, former Penn State offensive lineman, lined up next to him for 2 years. What Olu Fashanu is great at. We've picked some clips from the internet, and he's going to go over them and what's special about what Olu is doing on these plays. I think we're getting to the big games from last year. So Ohio State, Michigan, and a little bit of Iowa. So, Landon, thanks for doing this, by the way. I'm always excited. This is the first time I've ever been able to watch film with somebody else and kind of talk about it. So I'm excited about this. How are you doing? How are you doing coming back from spring break?
I'm doing well, T. Frank. I appreciate you asking. And no, I was really excited about this. We've been talking about this for a little while. And this is something I've been doing all my life, is watching film with other people breaking it down. So it's nothing new to me, and something I really enjoy doing. And something that the fans can definitely look to continue to see us do and me do in the future. So I'm excited about this. So the first thing I think he does really well here, if you go back to when they first initially make contact, he stays pretty vertical. He's very patient. He lets the D end, he lets him declare that so this is what we call a cross chop. The D end is, Aaron Donald made this really popular. He is essentially faking like a cross move with his outside hand, and then coming through and almost jumping in the air and swiping with that inside hand. Doesn't really land it on Olu's inside hand, on his right hand, because Olu is so powerful. He just blunts that near point. And the guy has to, essentially, the DN has to turn it into a power rush, and doesn't really get the move off that he wanted to do. He wanted to complete that chop and then rip that arm through and right there and bend that edge. But Olu's so strong with that outside left hand, so he comes in and clamps with that. So initially he makes that initial impact with his right hand, and the DN for Iowa is not able to get that right hand off of him right there. That initial strike, because Olu's that's having those long arms. That's the advantage of having those really long arms and being really good with your use of independent hands. So right there, the DN's not able to get that off initially. Then, so he's trying to rip through. Olu brings that outside hand, that left hand now, if you want to continue to roll it. And he essentially clamps it on. And he is so strong that he's able to somewhat redirect the energy, lift him up a little bit, and then it's just the pass rush rep is over right there. So that this is a really good kind of pointing out his use of independent hands. There's a lot of guys, and this is what's been taught for offensive line play for since the beginning of time, is that you want to have a strong two-hand punch. Well, as these defensive linemen and these DNs got better, now we got DNs like Chop Robinson, who are 6'4", 240, running in the 4.4s. It's like, all right, we have to evolve too. So something that's been big over the past 10 to 15 years is the use of independent hands on the offensive line. And that's something that Olu does really well. So not punching in sequence with both hands, but using one hand, then coming with the other. So something like that right here, you see him do a fantastic job of being patient with that left hand. And a lot of times you'll see Olu do this. And sometimes it can get him into trouble from time to time, but he's so talented. It's really more of a tool than it is deficit. Is he uses that left hand almost as a clamp hand. It's either going to clamp on that left shoulder pad, or sometimes it's going to tuck up, and you'll see what I mean on a couple other clips we get to, or it's going to tuck up under that breastplate of the defensive end. So he is really talented with his hand usage. And I would always talk to him a lot about it and try to even learn from him while I was playing. And a lot of it just comes natural to him. He's very talented with that and kind of keeping that D end at bay. And once he gets them into his chest, he's refitting and he's clamping down, and then right there, the DN sees he's got. I mean, now granted, the
That
Katron
he
runs right
won.
past. Yeah,
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 it's over.
it's over.
Yeah.
Like he's got him clamped up, and you'll see that a lot. I mean, anybody that really tries to give Olu a bull rush, they'll quit pretty quickly and try to turn to a second move and try to retrace
Yeah.
something like that.
So you mentioned this inside hand, and I'm kind of curious. Two arm
Mhm.
punch, individual hands. Just looking at this from an observational standpoint, not coming with kind of the institutional knowledge you have here, but it makes sense from this perspective of this is your close hand, so you're going to attack with this hand first, and then as the player gets closer, then you can add this second hand in instead of if you're back here at the point of contact. Yeah. Do you risk reaching if you're trying to two-arm punch? Do you risk reaching in here and then giving up this outside where now you're kind of turning your body and you're leaning forward to a certain extent because even if you got 36-inch arms, the length of distance between your outside left shoulder and your inside right shoulder is much different. Is that a fair way to categorize that? And I guess is that a thing that goes into this particular type of technique?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that analysis right there. That was honestly perfect, T. Frank. It is about that, that near point and how he does turn a little bit here, but as offensive lineman, you want to stay as square as possible, as long as possible. And if you're throwing both those hands at the same time, it's also harder to stay square. But you're absolutely right. That when I talked about earlier, that DN was trying to get that jump cross, that swipe that he did with his arms. He was trying to get through. And if Olu went punch with two hands right there, and when that chop that's coming right there inside, if he punches with both hands, and I mean obviously I think Olu still if he punches with both hands there he's going to lock him up, but
Right.
if he swipes both hands and then he's falling on his face, that's why they love that jump chop move at the defensive end position. But just keeping them at bay, one hand doesn't even get the inside right hand off, really, and then comes in with the clamp with the left hand, and it's pretty much over. But that was a great analysis, I would say, of why a lot of guys don't want to use two hands all the time.
So we got our next play, I believe, is a run here. So what do you see
Mm.
from Olu on this play?
Yeah, so first off, this is gonna be like a duo inside zone type of play right here. It's downhill. If you look at the right side of the line, you have those two combo blocks right there between 77 and 73, getting vertical up against the linebackers. And this is one of those cool plays with Katron and Nick, where it kind of allows them. They get to have that vision. Now, they have a specific aiming point, but there's a lot of gaps because this play is such a vertically pushed play, and that's between the both get tackle and guard or center and guard on the left
Mhm.
side. For this case, it allows the running backs to have a little bit more choice of where they're going to hit this. And if people want to think back to Nick Singleton's runs as a freshman, a lot of those big runs he broke off against Auburn, against Ohio, were actually ISO inside zone plays that he ended up bouncing out because they overcommitted to it. So that's the fun part about this inside zone ISO look here. But looking over here at Olu, he does a fantastic job. Right away, he understands the running back's aiming point is essentially right up the gut of that center. It's right behind the center. So he knows that he can essentially move his man and pin him off to the outside a little bit. This run isn't breaking outside, and like I mentioned earlier, the running back can break it outside, but that's on them. If they decide to do that, it's not on the left either tackle if they decide to do that. So Katron has absolutely fantastic vision. I think some of the best in college football, and sees Olu start to wheel his man out. And Olu's so powerful. He essentially, that's what we call throwing a guy out the club when you just take someone and just completely move them. So he just gives them a little throw and then keeps his
Yeah.
legs and hips moving. And Katron makes that cut. And that's the best part as an offensive lineman is it's technically sometimes it can be a little bit of a hold, but when you're in those trenches and those guys try to reach for half a second to make the tackle of a running back that's cutting through the hole, that's easy. It's easy pancake time right there. You're putting a guy on his back. So I think he does a fantastic job. He takes inside footwork here too at the beginning of the play. I don't know if you can fully see it, but inside footwork means that he's stepping with his right foot first and then his left foot. And this essentially gives him natural leverage to then
So
One,
he's taking this foot inside to deny the inside to the defensive end. Like,
exactly.
he's trying to get his body inside and push him out here to give the opportunity for the running back to have that hole in the first place, right?
Exactly, exactly. And the one thing is, if when the DN does see a step inside first, he might try to dent that down, and that gap between 74 and 56 between Olu and JB, it's called the B gap. So you do have to be aware. He wants to get his man out of that B gap. He wants that B gap to be free, especially because he knows that naturally there's a nose tackle that is in what we call this. So that's the A gap right there between JB and Hunter, the center. And so there's no one really in that B gap. So Olu has a very high IQ, 3.5 GPA. He's a supply chain management guy. You don't have to worry about that with him. He's a smart dude. So he's thinking before this play, hey,
Mhm.
it's not really supposed to hit out here, out in the left B gap, but because we have someone in the A gap right there, no one really feeling that B gap. That B gap, as far as responsibility, is that linebacker right there. That's as
Right.
far as I want to talk about defensive responsibility, that's his back. But Hunter and JB, the guard and the center, do such a fantastic job making this a vertical push double team up to the linebacker that he can barely even really see. And so Olu understands this. He understands. He said, "Okay, I'm going to wheel my guy out and give Katron this perfect hole right here to go through, and then just to finish. That's being a first round talent. That's having that unbelievable power that Olu does, where you can see him bring his hips right there. You see how it almost looks like he's standing like fully up. If you want to keep rolling it,
Yeah.
when you get through, like he's pretty much standing straight up. But that's actually just having his hips brought through, and that's where all your power is at in your hips. And if you look at the DN, he has essentially risen the D end up, and the D end is standing up too, because he's one thing Olu does really well is redirect people's power upwards by getting his hands underneath guys and lifting them up. And then this is what I'm talking about when Katron makes that cut, and this guy thinks, okay, I'm going to try to reach out and make a tackle. Nope, you got a 315-pound man putting you in the dirt.
Hey, it's T Frank. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on the YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our breakdowns with Landon on Penn State's class of 2024 players and more. More to come on that angle. But if you want the full 45-ish minute conversation and film study, check out bluewhiteillustrated.com where you'll get the full T Frank's film room. Link is in the description below.